Kim? Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It is 10 a.m. on the third Saturday of the month. So I am sure you already know it's time to join TV Toastmasters. And today we have an excellent mix of spontaneous speakers who will be speaking off the cuff for just 1 to 2 minutes, but answering impromptu questions that they won't even know the question until they've been called on. And then we also have a prepared speech where we will have an evaluator. And just as important as creating your speech and delivering your speech, it's really important to know how to give a good evaluation and how to respond when people give you evaluations and how to improve on your speaking skills by listening to others and what they felt you did well, or how they felt they would have learned more, or how they might have felt if you could have done just something a little bit better or a little bit different. So we get a little bit of everything here in today's meeting, and I am ready to introduce our Toastmaster of the day. So Veronica Sanford is our Toastmaster. If you would go ahead with the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, first I would like to show the agenda, and then I would like to talk about who our officers are going to be for the next year, and that will be starting in July. And if you bear with me just a moment, I might need to be given permission to share, which I apologize. I should have asked for that before. Oh, I am sharing. Wonderful. All right, here is our agenda. Obviously, we just had Joy, who is our president, our current president. And then there's myself, who is the Toastmaster today. Jeff is going to be both the timer and the grammarian word count person, and I'll introduce him shortly. Then table topics will be Joy. Speaker number 1 will be David Ash, and then Joy will be his evaluator. And so she's taking on 2 roles. And then evaluator number 1 is Joy, and then we'll have the timer report, the general evaluator report. Oh, which is Elizabeth. I'm sorry, Betsy. I'm sorry, Betsy, I missed you. And she's going to be doing the general evaluator section and introduce these people, turn it back over to me, and then back over to Joy. So any questions about the agenda or concerns about the agenda? Great. Okay, getting on. Now, at the moment, we don't have anybody who is a guest, but of course we are on YouTube, and so therefore people may not know what the roles are. If you'd like to go ahead and introduce those roles. But before we do that, I'd like to have a formal vote of the officers. And I'm going to first ask if there are any objections. Currently, our slate is Joy for president, David Ash for VP of Education, Betsy for VP of Public Relations, which I understand she's held in the past, Dave Delahanty for VP of Membership, Janet for Treasurer, Veronica, myself for Secretary, and Joe Schwerling for Sergeant of Arms. Jeff, although he is, I'm not sure, Jeff, if you are a member, but I know that he's not able to hold an officer role because he is our club coach, which is a very important role in and of itself. Jeff, are you a formal member of the club?
I am not. I am not allowed to be a member of the club and be the club coach.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So therefore, you would not also be allowed to vote.
No.
So with respect to this slate of roles, is there anyone who is interested in changing the positions that are here? Okay, I don't hear anything, and so we'll go on to the next topic. And if you bear with me just a moment, I can see everybody. Would anybody object if we had a show of hands with regard to voting for the entire slate at the same time?
Sounds good to me.
Veronica, could you go over the slate again?
Yes, ma'am. So we have Joy as the president, and I am showing it on my screen, and it's also in the agenda. So Joy is the president, David Ash, VP of Ed, Betsy, VP PR, Dave Delahanty, VP Membership. Am I going too fast?
I've got
Okay.
something. I'm okay.
Janet, Treasurer, me, Secretary, Joe Schwerling, Sergeant of Arms.
Okay, got it.
And though Ron Kime and there's another castle, and I believe on our membership list, but they are not here and will not be making up quorum. All right, I would now like to have us vote on the slate with a show of hands. All ayes, please raise your hand for everyone who's on the slate to be voted as officer roles. Okay, I am receiving 5 hands, and therefore it is unanimous for those who are here. Any nays or questions or concerns? Betsy, you're looking over to the side. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Sorry.
Okay, that's good. I just watched for eye contact to see if you have another thought or concern. Great. All right, moving on then. I would now like to introduce, let me just correctly say, I did have 9 extra minutes set aside for this topic. And we can make up that time using additional time for table topics if you so choose, Joy. Otherwise, we can speak again towards the end of the call. I'm just turning it over now to Jeff. The reason I say that now, Jeff, is that you may not be aware that the time is going to increase. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and thank you all for the vote. Oh, Jeff, would you like to discuss what the timer roll is and then
Sure,
go
yeah.
right into grammarian?
Sounds good. Yeah, timer roll. I'm going to be timing each of our speeches today. The prepared speech is 5 to 7 minutes. So you get the green at 5, yellow is 6, and red at 7. Table topics 1 to 2, so 1, 1.5, and 2 minutes. And the evaluation is 2 to 3, 2, 2.5, and 3 minutes. For grammarian role, I'll be not only keeping track of interesting use of language, I'll also be tracking the ahs and ums, and the word of the day is going to be moxie. That's M-O-X-I-E. I'll put it in the chat shortly. It can refer to courage and determination. It's a noun. Think of it as energy and pep or know-how. An example, they showed a lot of moxie in questioning their company's policy. Or she clearly doesn't need coffee to start her day full of moxie. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Speechless. What a great word. I can think of a lot of people with moxie. All right, there you go. I'd now like to turn it over to Joy Harris, who is going to be our table topics master for today.
Great. I am glad to not be inhibited by the time. So I'm hoping that every one of us gets to do a table topic today, as impromptu speaking is so important. So I'd like to introduce a concept for today's table topics where we get to use our imagination muscle. So when I ask you a question, you do not have to answer with a real honest fact. You may give any type of outrageous answer that you choose. And of course, if you feel like, well, I just want to answer a factual question, that's fine too. But I'm going to ask us to think outside the box. I would like to ask David Ash to do our next table topic. So David, please describe for us a time when people congratulated you so much for being so brave and so courageous, and a time where you showed a lot of moxie. Any story will do, doesn't have to be true, anything at all.
Thank you for that, Madam Table Topics Master. Well, I'm going to embellish, one of my skydiving stories. So I'm going to in my upcoming speech, I'm going to be talking a bit about skydiving, about how one develops moxie in that. But let me say that that when I was getting back to skydiving, it was around the same time that that Felix Baumgartner made his jump from 120,000 feet, 130,000 feet, or whatever. And so surprisingly, I was I wasn't expecting this, but I was invited to join Felix on this jump. So it was pretty scary, kind of getting into this little gondola and climbing up to 130,000 feet. And wasn't all that used to using all this oxygen and so forth. But when and I was definitely a little bit scared. But when I got up there at 130,000 feet or whatever, and I found it was an experience I'd never had before. I'd never jumped from a balloon before, and so I think it showed a lot of moxie, kind of jumping from that from that very high height with Felix Baumgartner. Thank you, and back to you, Madam Table Talks now.
Thank you, David. I could just see that. Very illustrative, 1 to 2 minutes. That's pretty good. All right, let's see if Betsy can answer a question. This time we're going to talk about a time when people thought you were intimidating. Why would they think that about such a kind person? However, you turned that situation around and you showed them that you are courageous and brave, but not necessarily intimidating. Can you tell us a time where that happened, real or not? Can you give us 2 minutes about that?
All right. Well, it kind of brings to mind a event that happened at General Electric. I used to work for General Electric in Evendale for almost 18 years. And during that time, I worked on turbine blades, and I had to sometimes do a little, most of it was analysis, but sometimes we needed an actual physical test. And we had to poke holes in the part and blow air through it. And I needed some help from somebody that was in a shop. And I'm kind of tiny and a female, and I wasn't sure people would really listen to me. But on that particular day, I wasn't even thinking about it. I wore like a suit jacket, and I walked into the room, and they thought I was some big boss, and they jumped right up to help me. So I got the part made and was successful. And generally, I'm not very intimidating at all. But back to you, Madam Table Topics.
What an excellent example. I think that was a tough question. Sorry about that, but you answered that very, very well. And now we have time for one more. And we're going to talk about a time. So this is for Veronica. We're going to talk about a time when you saw someone else be courageous and brave and show a lot of moxie. Can you show us an example of someone else in your life or someone else you can tell us about that showed a lot of bravery, courage, and moxie?
Yes, Madam Table Topics Master. So I had been a VP of membership, if I recall correctly, at my job at our Toastmasters club. And we had a friend or a new member who had a very significant stutter. And his name will remain nameless. But I will say that he became a good friend of mine, and he gave many speeches and really overcame completely, at times of stress. But he overcame his stutter, and he was promoted again and again and again. And I will say that he did leave the company that I was with at the time, but he then got promoted and moved on to a different company who is a VP and an executive. And I give a lot of credit to Toastmasters. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I think we all did so well at answering what I thought were tossing out some odd questions. I have an opportunity to tell people about the importance of impromptu speaking, whether I'm talking to authors of books and they go to a book signing. And of course, people want to know about their book, but they never know what kind of questions somebody is going to ask them at the end. So they came for a 30-minute and they read for 20 minutes. And the questions that they get at the end are only helped by being a member of a Toastmasters club when they can just speak impromptu. They're not asking about the content of the book, most likely. Sometimes they're asking about people's personal life or just something, anything off the wall. So there's so many reasons why practicing our impromptu speaking is so important. Well, I think we've wrapped up the table topics and it's time for speaker number 1.
Actually, Joy, you have time to answer one yourself. We still have 12 minutes on the clock for table topics if you would like.
Well, thank you. That is kind of why I elaborated a little bit about wrapping it up. Do you want to ask me a question along those same lines?
Yes, I know that you're a success coach and that you've had probably a lot of coachees. So my question is twofold. 2 questions for you. 1, how do you encourage people to have more moxie? And number 2, can you think of an example of somebody who really overcame a challenge and had to pull on all the courage and moxie that they could to accomplish something difficult? The twofer. You can answer one, and then we can start the timer over for the second one if you so choose.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. It is pretty important to help people build their moxie and build their courage as a success coach, because right now I'm promoting that I help people build their confidence muscle and have less stress. And the contrast between those, if they're more confident, they will have less stress. And if they have less stress, they'll become more confident. That's pretty much what I do. However, a lot of times it starts with the confidence. Many of my coachees are already executives and they're already business people, or even an engineer. They have achieved some success in their business life, but what they're looking for is that feeling of confidence. And so really a lot of times it helps to help them understand where those feelings come from and why they don't have a feeling of confidence. So I pretty much let them dig deep into their confidence muscle and strengthen that quite a bit. So I will wrap that up since I got a green on that. It was a twofer. That was how I help people. Well, so I guess we'll start again.
Example.
I am a writer.
Can you think of an example of somebody who you really saw grow?
Okay, it just occurred to me. So as a writer, I go to writers groups, at least a couple a month. But what I like to write are case studies. And some of my case studies are an aggregation. I don't really say so-and-so, executive at General Electric had this problem and this is how it was resolved. However, if I can aggregate executives of that type, maybe managers of customer service, which is a challenging job because your employees are dealing with complaints a lot of times, not just providing customer service, but hearing angry customer service. So I have a lot of case studies that I've written up about people who had to become brave and they had to become courageous, and they had to show a lot of determination, energy, pep, and know-how as part of their job. And then to also help them build that up in their personal life is really important, to take your business skills into your personal life so that you come to the crossroads. I say this a lot too, the crossroads of professional development and personal development. and work on both of those things. Thank you. What a great question, Veronica. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Okay, and so now I would like to turn it back over to Joy to introduce David Ash. Joy, are you comfortable with his introduction?
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
I'm
there
ready.
you go. And if you would please, David, just pick up after she's complete.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce David Ash, who is a longstanding member of Cincinnati TV Toastmasters and also an officer in our club, and will be an officer again next year. So I'm looking forward to hearing his talk. And today, fear at times is necessary because without it, we would have no instinct to avoid dangerous situations. Yet too often we allow fear to hold ourselves back from situations we could easily master if we could only overcome the fear. So today, David Ash will talk about some techniques he has found to work for overcoming fear. Overcoming fear, David Ash.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, so I'm here to talk to you today about overcoming fear. And I thought that courage was the opposite of fear, but I'm actually realizing that moxie may be the opposite of fear even more. So I think it's a little bit more than just courage that it takes to overcome fear. And I'm going to share a little bit of that with you today. Now, as I think some of you know, maybe not everyone, I am a licensed skydiver. I jump, in the past have jumped fairly regularly, not so much lately, but I have jumped quite a bit in the past. And I think you can probably imagine there are some scary situations one encounters in skydiving. And I'm going to tell you a story about the scariest thing that happened for me skydiving. No, it was not jumping with Felix Baumgartner. It was not even the first time that I went skydiving, where that door was open, 3,000 feet. There was just 3,000 feet between me and the ground. That was scary, but not the scariest thing. Was it the scariest thing the time that my arm got caught in the riser and I couldn't get it out and was having trouble navigating my parachute? And no, that was scary, but it was not the scariest thing. Was the scariest experience skydiving? Was it the time when my main parachute only partially opened, or even the time when it did not open at all and I had to go to my reserve parachute? And no, those were scary, but it wasn't the scariest time. The scariest experience I had skydiving was back in my student days for the skydiving club, and I was asked to take on an executive role. And I was told, hey, it's not much. You just need to introduce the sport of skydiving to the club at the first meeting of the term. And I said, what? I have to do a speech? And that, my friends, was very, very scary. So I'm here to talk to you about overcoming fear. And I think we do a lot of things in life because we want to overcome fear. That's why I become a Toastmaster. It's also why I became a skydiver, to overcome certain fears in my life. I'm going to draw on a fair bit of the work of Brian Germain, who is he's a well-known skydiver, but he's also taken the study of fear in skydiving and has distilled it out to give us techniques for mastering fear in a lot of different areas, which I think apply to us as Toastmasters in probably a lot of different other areas of our life. So we have to start by defining what we mean by fear. Fear, for me, it's something which initially is a good thing. So and a fear is kind of a sense that there's some danger in some kind of a situation. And usually it's an initial reaction, which is right. So when we're skydiving, we do have that 3,000 or 10,000 foot drop. There is danger there. When we're giving a speech, we are in a situation where we're being evaluated by others. It's similar to situations where maybe on the job, we're on the spot. So there is sometimes a real element of fear there that's valid. But fear is an unprocessed type of emotion. It's something we have not analyzed yet. So it's dangerous if we stay in a state of fear for too long. We want to change fear into something that's called caution. So when I say caution, I'm talking about something that has been analyzed a bit more, that we understand the situation a bit better. So if we look at a situation, we initially feel fear, then we look at it more carefully and there's still caution. We do want to approach it cautiously. I'm not saying avoid that, but I am saying, yeah, we don't want to let that initial paralysis with fear define us. So what are the techniques we can use to transform this unhealthy fear into a more healthy form of a caution? Well, the first thing is that we need to relax. And in a scary situation, that may be easier said than done. Obviously, we're dealing with something that's really scary. So how do we relax? Well, the thing is that if we just tell ourselves that we're relaxed at first, we may not believe it at first, but if we convince ourselves that we're relaxed, or we try to convince ourselves that we're relaxed, eventually our body starts to respond to that. So initially we're just pretending to be relaxed, but we just keep up the pretense for a while, then we can actually relax in a given situation. So our body eventually responds to that. The second thing to do then, after we've relaxed in a given situation, is to focus. Look at, okay, what is the challenge here? How can I respond to this? What are my options? So we need to focus a little bit more and figure out how we're going to solve this situation. And then the final thing is to get in the flow of the situation. At that point, we need to act in some way and figure out, okay, what's the flow of action that we can take? And when we're in the flow, when we're in the zone, it's almost impossible not to take whatever action that we need to take. So people talk about, for example, how scary skydiving is. Well, when we're actually jumping out of a plane, we don't usually forget to pull the parachute or whatever. We're very much in the situation. We're in that zone. So once we get into that zone, we actually can respond very well in most situations. But the key is to first relax, and then so that we can figure out what to do, then focus, figure out what to do, and finally, then we can actually get into the flow and decide on a course of action. So these three things are really what a kind of irrational state of fear into a more rational form of caution that we can then respond to with moxie. And back to you, Madam Evaluator.
Betsy, I would now like to introduce you as our general evaluator. And if you would be so kind also to speak a little bit about what the general evaluator role does.
Sure. Veronica, the general evaluator more or less oversees the evaluation portion of the Toastmaster meeting. So first you have your prepared speeches and your table topics portion where people speak interactively, and then the evaluation portion. And I'll be calling on the different people that are serving roles on my team. And then finally, I'll give a overview of how the meeting went. So first I'd like to call on Joy to do the evaluation of David Ash's speech.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Betsy. David, you have evaluated me several times, and I have evaluated you several times. I think this is the best speech you have ever given. I mean, ever. And you keep improving. So I don't know if I've said that before, but I think there are so many good things to say about this speech. And it wasn't the topic that attracted me. However, you said you were a licensed skydiver, and you said partially open. I mean, I was scared just hearing about a partially open parachute or any other kind of possible disaster. I'm actually getting scared thinking about it even now. So you evoked my emotion, even though you said that wasn't the scariest thing. However, I think my fear of skydiving is real. So you actually helped me understand that I do have a fear of skydiving. And I'm overcoming my fear of speaking, but I know exactly what you're saying, David. You were asked to give a speech. You were asked to go up and talk about something. And you actually thought that was scarier than jumping out of a plane? Ooh. You know, your content, as well as really getting to the emotions of what you're speaking about, was excellent. It was right on. Your vocal variety was right on. Your gestures were absolutely flawless. It wasn't sprinkled with too many gestures like I tend to do, but I saw that you did use your hand gestures. And for us on Zoom, it is not that we can stand at a podium and give gestures. We literally have to, be conscious of giving hand gestures. I was just writing best speech when you said it was important to be relaxed. I believe you were very relaxed. You were using good phrases like tell ourselves to keep up the pretense. Another good phrase was get in the flow. I think I missed, you said those are the three things. I think at the beginning, I might have missed you saying, I'm going to have three things, and here's number one, here's number two, here's number three. But that is the only thing I could think of that didn't really speak to me, that I didn't catch that there were three things. And I can't recite what they are right now, but overall, an absolutely excellent speech about fear and how you have overcome this fear of speaking as one of our excellent speakers at the Cincinnati TV Toastmasters Club. So thank you, David.
Thank you.
Back to you, Betsy.
Well, thank you, Joy. And now I'll call on Jeff to both give the timer roll and the grammar master roll.
Thank you, Betsy. I'll start with the timer roll for table topics. Myself, the eulogy 157, David skydiving with Felix Baumgardner. He had the tall tales component in there. I completely forgot about that. That was 1 minute and 6 seconds. Betsy, being intimidating at GE on the factory floor. I can just see Betsy walking out there with her swagger and her jacket and all of her importance and being intimidating. So that was 1 minute and 8 seconds. Veronica, about the friend that overcame stuttering. That was 1 minute and 10 seconds, I think. Joy, success coach, focusing on confidence, 1 minute, 13 seconds. And Joy, giving the example and using the cross studies, that was 1 minute and 25 seconds. David Ash, overcoming fear, agree with Joy, that was a great speech. 5 minutes, 43 seconds, and Joy's evaluation, 3 minutes and 5 seconds. On to grammarian. The word of the day was moxie. Joy used it, and David used it, I think, a couple times. Interesting language. Joy already touched on some of this, but I'll paraphrase David's at the beginning of his speech. His scariest moment was not jumping out of a plane at 3,000 feet with the parachute partially opening. His most terrifying moment was giving a speech. So it's so true. It's amazing. And I also liked transforming unhealthy fear into healthy caution. Back to you, Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, overall, I think the meeting has gone very well. We started on time. We got through the officer roles and had a little extra time so everybody could do a table topics, and I think that was really good to be able to hear from everybody. And the speech was very good. We all enjoyed the contrast between fearing jumping out of a plane with things going wrong and the fear of speaking. So, and the evaluation portion, I think, has moved along pretty well. So I'm going to turn it back over to Veronica, the Toastmaster of the day.
Thank you very much, Madam General Evaluator. Excellent job. Really appreciate you. And being our newest member of the club, too. I would like to post a comment to our general audience, possibly watching on YouTube. We do, and I know that Joy, our president, is going to speak to this as well, but we do have a website, and it's CincinnatiTVToastmasters.org. And on it, we do have our Zoom link. Our meetings are standard, except for the meeting that's coming up on July 4th. And I would say that it is on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We are a virtual club, complete virtual club. So you could join and do that time translation. David Ash joins at 7 a.m. I just gave some personal information about David. And then our second meeting of the month is the first Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. On Saturday, it's the third Saturday at 10 a.m. The interesting thing about Toastmasters, and I will be brief, is that for me, when I was 16 years old, my father said, being able to give speeches and have confidence in communication is one of the most important skills to develop if you want to progress in corporate America. And I would say, even if you're in a startup or trying to run a political action committee, or heaven forbid, actually going into politics, which I do believe takes a lot of moxie, and God bless civil servants that are working behind the scenes to help all of that happen safely and effectively. But I would say that it took me many, many years to join a club. And it was only because my corporation that I was working for at the time did offer and support a startup of a new club within the corporation. So it is something to consider if you're interested in Toastmasters, but you want to join with people that you work with and you want to get the accolades within a corporate environment. You can start a club within your corporation. Reach out to Toastmasters and .org. That is Toastmasters.org. That's the www. And say, hey, I think my corporation would support us starting a club. And also local communities. If you're interested in changing the culture of your community, you could start a club and have people in your community join as well. And I would say that there's one other thing, and that is there's something that's called, it used to be called living room diplomacy. And it was back during a very contentious election where this movement started. And it was where people from various different belief systems about how politics should run, how our country should be run, joined together and met in a friendly, open environment where they were able to talk about local politics, local crime, local schools, local cleaning up of trash, local safe streets, etc. And sure enough, they came to agree and respect each other, even when they didn't agree completely. And therefore, if we were to do that neighborhood by neighborhood by neighborhood, imagine how our country would shift away from, in my opinion anyway, some of the vitriol that's occurring within our politics today. So I'd now like to turn it over to our president of club, Joy Harris.
Thank you, Veronica. And thank you, everyone here contributed to the meeting today, contributing with table topics and just being part of our club. I love our club partly because we are all virtual and because we are all dedicated to our roles. So I would like to congratulate the new officers of our club, which start in January, few weeks from now in July. So these are our club officers from July to next June. And I'm really glad that you were able to hold that today so that we could vote in our new slate of officers. I am pretty excited about that. Today's speeches and the table topics, I think, went together very well. And everyone was able to talk a little bit about courage and bravery and use our word of the day, moxie, because we were talking about fear and also moxie. I will give an example. Right now, I am an award-winning video producer who has received a blue chip Cincinnati video awards from Time Warner Cable. That's before it was Spectrum or whatever it is now. And I actually hoped, and I was a co-producer of a show for a year, and I hoped we didn't win because I didn't want to have to get up and give a speech. And we did win, so I don't remember anything about it at that time. When I got up in front, and this would be in person, there was no virtual back then, my peripheral vision went away. I don't even know what I could see, but I don't remember a thing about it. Then later, I became manager at corporations. Before I started doing so much contract work, I was a manager for many years, a couple of decades, at one of the big companies here in Cincinnati. And I had to give a speech. Our department had won something. I was so nervous. I got up there and said that this group is the most dedicated, the most honorable, and high integrity. I used so many superlatives that they laughed. I think I'm a little better at crafting the words now, but I'm a lot better of saying, if someone said, we need you to fill in, can you speak about this? Well, for 5 to 7 minutes, most likely I can, but I have the natural amount of butterflies in the stomach. You know, I just have that anxiety that anyone would have, but I don't wish that I wouldn't win a Blue Chip City Award because of the fear, which I definitely had back then. So I would like to thank Toastmasters and TV Toastmasters in general. This is the only club I've ever belonged to, for helping me get over that fear of, you got to do it. You know, like David said, keep up the pretense of being relaxed, and you'll just make it. You will make it.
So Joy,
So also,
next for you is jumping out of an airplane. Is that what I'm hearing?
well, yeah, I haven't tried that. When I used to hike in the mountains, I would walk close to the cliffs, or I would want to go and look over a cliff, and my husband would say, get back away from the cliff. Now that was back in the day. I don't think I'm that brave anymore. I don't think I'd be, oh, let's see how close to the cliff I can step. No. I'm staying right on the path and following the path because I know about safety. So, all right. So thank you for that. And thank you, Veronica, for bringing up that we are the first Thursday of the month at 6 o'clock, except for July, which we will be July 11th at 6 o'clock. And then we are always the third Saturday at 10 a.m. And sometimes we have to move that if Toastmasters organization has a meeting, but normally you will find us on the first Thursday, the third Saturday, and you can always find us on YouTube. We have our own YouTube channel. If you look up Cincinnati TV Toastmasters, you'll find our previous speeches, and we can watch ourselves grow.